This is Richard Wolff from Democracy at Work, responding to another Ask Prof Wolff question from our Patreon community. This one comes from Caroline Duvier. She's been reading David Graeber and poses an important question about the relationship between anarchism of the sort that he advocates and supports on the one hand, and Marxism and socialism and so on the other. Very important issue, very important question, and it has been for a long time. I think the best way to answer is to remind everyone that both socialism on the one hand and anarchism on the other have a variety of interpretations. They are not all consistent or compatible with one another. In other words, inside socialism, there is conflict about what that word means, and consequently, different attitudes towards anarchism. And likewise, among anarchists, there's lots of disagreement, including different attitudes towards Marxism, socialism, and so on. So, for example, there were times when one of the greatest thinkers in the anarchist tradition, Mikhail Bakunin from Russia, and Karl Marx worked closely together as colleagues, friends, and so on. And there were other times in those men's lifetimes when they were bitter enemies and everything in between. And that's a good metaphor, if you like, for what has always been the case. Let me explain it briefly this way. Part of socialism is a view that the state is the corrective for capitalism. In other words, that the role of the state, particularly if it can be captured by progressive or democratic or socialist political movements and parties, that part of what the state should do is offset the harsh edges of capitalism. And so, for example, in Scandinavia and Western Europe, that's what you see. You see governmental action that softens the hard edges of capitalism. Free education, a comprehensive medical insurance for everybody, minimum wages, protections for workers in relationship to employers, and so on. But of course, this view gives to the state extraordinary economic power. And it is, of course, not all that difficult, and you see it all the time, that the economic power given to the state to intervene economically to shape capitalism in less harsh ways than it would otherwise display could lead to a government taking on all kinds of political and cultural and ideological powers. And this is anathema to all kinds of anarchists who don't like the state, who don't want the state to have all that kind of power, see no need for it, see it as horrible or hostile to the needs of people, and so on. That kind of socialist who venerates the state, who gives the state power, who sees the state as an important role, is going to have all kinds of disagreements with an anarchist who doesn't. Let's take the anarchists. Among them, there are those who think that the enemy of the mass of people is the government. They're not interested in the economic side of things. For them, the government is the evil. The government is, in the end, often the source of the problem. Here you get phrases like anarchistic libertarianism or libertarian anarchism. In other words, the anarchist, typically on the left politically, finds common cause with libertarians, more typically on the right, in a notion that the focal point, the target, the key issue for people to open up society to be a better place for all of us is to attack and focus on the state. Right? That kind of anarchist doesn't have much in common with socialists and particularly with Marxists, for whom the key issue is less the state than it is the capitalist economic system and the capitalists who sit at the top of that system. On the other hand, there are anarchists who are perfectly willing to accept the proposition that what we have as a problem is both the capitalist system and the governmental system that is itself partly what shapes capitalism and is shaped by it, and that therefore anarchists should be the natural colleagues, comrades of the Marxists and the socialists. You might think of it as an alliance which agrees in the following way. The anarchist will support the Marxist in the critique of capitalism, and the deal is the Marxist then must support the anarchist in the critique of centralized state power. And on that basis, they have in the past, they do nowadays, in many places, work quite well together. So you have to be aware that there are struggles inside socialism and Marxism about how to understand and relate to anarchism, and vice versa among anarchist disagreements. That means that there are powerful potentials for alliance and coalition if certain ways of understanding anarchism can meet certain ways of understanding socialism and Marxism, then you could have the basis for a very fruitful, powerful alliance. This is Richard Wolff for Democracy at Work.